Okay, we're just about at 9:03. So I wanted to just get us started today. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for all being here. My name is Kim Hankins, and on behalf of the Board of Directors for the Environmental Defenders of McHenry County and the Sustainability Center of McHenry County College, I'm delighted, really delighted to welcome you all to the first Sustainability Summit. I'm truly sorry that we couldn't meet in person at MCC, but as we all know, COVID often has other plans for us. We're thrilled to see now we're over 60 people, which is fantastic. We're still thrilled to see all of you, even if it's Zoom, but we are looking forward to a really interesting and productive morning. Now, as most of you know, the Defenders do a lot of their work with their volunteers through action teams. And the Waste Reduction Team is this phenomenal group that has put this work so hard to put together the summit together. So before we get started today, I want to just recognize them. You'll be hearing from all of them throughout the day, so you'll get to know them. But I have to just quickly give them a quick shout out. So I'm going to read off their names. We have Annette Perrin, Ashley Lang, Kelly Beckman, Claire Hodge, Zach Dolezal, and our co-chairs, Cecilia Carmen and Michelle Murin. Thank you once again for joining us today. We hope you have a really, really wonderful day. And I'm going to turn it over to Michelle and Cecilia to get us started.
Thank you, Kim, for that intro. And good morning to everybody. And once again, welcome to the first ever McHenry County Sustainability Summit. Like Kim said, my name is Michelle Murin.
And my name is Cecilia Carmen.
And we are the chairs for the Environmental Defenders in McHenry County's Waste Reduction Action Team.
We first just wanted to give a background of who we are. I've lived in Lake in the Hills for 23 years. I've always enjoyed living in McHenry County. I think we live in a place that's a unique opportunity. I mean, I can walk out my back door and go cross country skiing and then walk a half a mile and go to a Class A restaurant. So I feel like we have an opportunity here to save our resources here in McHenry County. And I've always heard the saying that, we're borrowing this land from our children. So I always keep that to heart, that we need to keep this county and our resources available for future generations. By trade, I am a nurse, but I've just always cared about the environment. And I joined the Defenders and wanted to get more involved. And I knew waste reduction was important, but honestly, it was never a big, most important thing. That never was a big passion for me. But to be honest, it was the only meeting that worked with my schedule. So I joined, and my eyes were just open wide. And it really began to fuel inside me to work on waste reduction, especially food waste. And I hope today the same thing happens to you here as you hear the facts and see the solutions are not very complicated. They can be done. So yes, I'm asking you today to make a commitment to change, and that these changes will become a normal part of our daily lives here in the county. That's my goal here today, and I'm so glad that you guys are here to join us.
Thanks, Cecilia, for that little bit of a background. Well, I'm kind of in the same boat as Cecilia. I've always been passionate about the environment, but maybe just a little bit more on an extreme scale. I am an environmental and sustainability professional. I obtained my bachelor's degree in sustainable management through the University of Wisconsin River Falls. I grew up in Island Lake and have spent a decent amount of time exploring McHenry County in my youth, and also have been working in the McHenry County area before. I've always been an environmental activist, and I'm very passionate about driving change in industry, my local community through the work with Defenders, and in the world in general, also as a volunteer for Care About Climate. So we just wanted to give you a little background on us. And we would like to talk a little bit about the history of our team and the Defenders in general. But first, we want to mention our amazing team, as they have been working behind the scenes today to coordinate this event. So again, thank you to Annette Parent, Ashley Ling, Clara Hodge, Kelly Beckman, and Zach Dolezal for all your hard work to make this summit a reality. So just a little background on our waste reduction team. As you can tell from the name, our focus is reducing waste at the source and diverting it from landfills. We encourage and assist community members throughout the county to move away from single-use plastics, to reduce and divert food waste, and to increase accessibility of diversion programs. So our team came from very humble beginnings as the Bring Your Own Bag, BYOB initiative, and we have since expanded our scope to include plastic bags, straws, plastic silverware, styrofoam, and especially now food waste.
All right, and now I'm just going to do a little background on the Defenders. The Defenders motto is we have 52 years of preserving, protecting, and educating. Our mission statement is in order to protect all living things, the Environmental Defenders is dedicated to the preservation and improvement of the natural environment in McHenry County. As a grassroots organization, we are committed to building sound ecological relationships between people and the natural world that supports life. In 1970, we were founded by two groups that merged, the Defenders of the Fox and a group of environmental-minded residents in Woodstock to form the grassroots organization, then called the McHenry County Defenders. In that same year, our county witnessed the first Earth Day and the beginning of the recycling movement here in McHenry County, initiated by the Defenders as we know them today. I am honored that some of those original members are still with us here. They have motivated our team. And as they pass the torch to us, I do take it very seriously, and I hope we live up to their expectations. The Defenders have a lot of momentum and in time have created the Land Conservancy of McHenry County, and then later helped develop the McHenry County Conservation District. Their passion motivates me, and I hope today you can feel that passion and create and commit to the goals to help reduce waste in our beautiful county. One of the Defenders' most impactful accomplishments is our Styrofoam collection program. We like to thank all the townships and towns that have partnered with us. Together, we have saved over 30,000 pounds of styrofoam from landfills annually. We want to highlight our partnership also with the health department. Together, we have hosted several very successful e-recycling events. And also many of you know about our bookstores, and statistics show that this year we've saved 21,000 books from going to our landfills. Now, the Defenders also, we like to get our hands dirty. We've been involved in advocating for planting native plants at our local solar farms, countywide, and manage 3 prairies and open spaces, including our own Defender street property in Woodstock. We also work with municipalities and the county to clean energy initiatives, such as installing electric car vehicle charging stations. Lastly, I like to make sure that we know, let you guys know, we do partner a lot with our community. We've done a lot of collaboration with McSEEP, the McHenry County School Education Program, to bring environmental education to our children. And also we work with the Latino community through the Conversación program, which Defenders help to create. With all that, that we do, you can see there's a lot of amazing passion with our volunteers, and we're all supported by a little staff of 5 people. So as you can see, there's still a lot more to do, but none of this is done for free. And we for this summit, we did get a generous grant, and Michelle is going to help us thank our sponsors.
Thanks, Cecilia. So the summit has been made possible through the support and collaboration of McHenry County College and the Environmental Defenders, McHenry County team members and staff, especially Destiny Seaton. And a big thank you to Aptar Group's Charitable Foundation, as they awarded us a grant to fund this event and provide the necessary resources to maintain our styrofoam recycling program to community members at no cost. So just a little bit about Aptar Group. They are an international plastics packaging manufacturer headquartered in Crystal Lake. They design and manufacture plastic packaging for beauty, home, food, and pharmaceutical products. Consumer products that you might recognize that they produce packaging for are your upside down ketchup bottles, allergy nasal sprays, and pump dispensers for different types of lotions. So their charitable foundation supports both local and global organizations that are rooted in human and health services, education, arts, and culture. Recently, Aptar Group was also ranked #1 on Forbes Green Growth 50 2021 inaugural list. So that's just a little bit about our sponsor. For today, we have invited you all here to discuss environmental challenges of waste in McHenry County and to start a countywide initiative. By bringing our communities together, we can start the conversation on reducing waste in our towns, businesses, and schools. As some of you may already know, waste is a growing problem at a local, national, and global level. So we have invited experts in the field to provide us with information on current environmental issues, success stories, and available resources for each type of organization here today. We hope that neighboring towns and businesses can learn from each other's experiences and talk through common barriers. Our end goal is to establish countywide goals that we can all work towards. Following the summit, you will be invited to meet again this summer to discuss progress on goals, issues, and any areas that you need help with. Our team is also available as a resource to assist you throughout this journey. You are not expected to do this alone. Today's agenda can be found in the welcome packet that was sent via email and also posted in Eventbrite. We will kick off the summit with our keynote speakers and a word from our Environmental Defenders Executive Director, Cynthia Canner. Each breakout will have expert speakers and a moderator to guide the conversation.
All right, and before we start, we just want to go do a little brief reminder of Zoom etiquette. Please make sure you're muted during the event to minimize any background noise or interruptions while our speakers are presenting. We do request for the keynote that you do turn off your videos just in case there's any connective issues. And just remember, since this is a virtual event and the internet can go, just please be patient and just log back in if there's any issues. If you do need immediate assistance, please just email our it's waste reduction cl@gmail.com, and there's someone monitoring the email through the whole summit. All right, and then also we just want to say once again, we are really sorry we all couldn't meet together. We really wanted to provide you guys that meal so we all can sit and discuss what we learned today and have that interaction. But as you know, this pandemic has stopped us. And we did consider having you guys all pick up a meal here at Duke's, but we knew that it wouldn't be possible for everyone. So as Michelle mentioned, we will be having a little summit reunion this summer. Well, we will have you guys all enjoy food, drinks, and all our accomplishments. I just want to thank you again all for being here. This was something that just came up during a meeting, and it slowly became what it is today. And I just want to thank, before we even start, all our keynotes and our speakers who've taken the time out from their day to be here, and all of you who've maybe took time off from their work to be here today. I really appreciate you putting our environment first this morning. All right, and then now I will introduce our first keynote speaker. Okay. All right. right, so our first keynote is Julie Schliff. She is an environmental scientist with the United States Environmental Protection Agency in the Region 5 office. Mrs. Schliff has joined the EPA in 2005 and performed GIS support for groundwater evaluation and analysis. She currently works in materials management, providing technical assistance to help businesses and organizations qualify and improve sustainable food management practices. Mrs. Schliff is a Region 5 coordinator for EPA's Food Recovery Challenge and is involved with advancing composting in Illinois through the Illinois Food Scrap Coalition. Mrs. Schliff has a BA in environmental policy and a master's in public administration from Roosevelt University. One thing Julie did not mention, she's also grew up in Crystal Lake and is a graduate of, I think, Crystal Lake South.
Central, go Tigers.
Central. So it's great to have her virtually back here in McHenry County and Crystal Lake. I was just so floored that she was able to take this time out. All right, so Julie, let me make you a host and then we can get you going.
Great, thank you so much for that introduction.
There you go. Okay. And if you guys could just turn off your videos, that'd be great.
I'm just going to share my screen here.
Okay.
And then get started. Let's see. All right, can you see my slides?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Do some moving around here. So yeah, thanks so much for having me today. I really appreciate the invite. Like Cecilia said, my name is Julie. I'm the coordinator for EPA Region 5's Sustainable Management of Food program. For those of you who aren't familiar with Region 5, it encompasses 6 states across the Midwest: Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, and Ohio. So yeah, I was thrilled when I was invited to speak because, as Cecilia said, I grew up at Crystal Lake. Go Tigers. I wanted to include a nice shot of the sunrise over the lake that a friend of mine took a couple months ago. So growing up in Crystal Lake in the 80s was amazing. It was nothing short of awesome. Back then, we really didn't need anything more than Crystal Point Mall, rest in peace, and the beach, where I managed to live off of Fun Dip for several weeks straight each summer. There's so many great restaurants now, but back then we had it pretty good also. We had Riverbend, we had Hobnob, Around the Clock, and the Village Squire, just to name a few. I think the Village Squire is still around. But the one thing I didn't do while growing up in Crystal Lake was really give the concept of food waste a single thought. I didn't grow up in a household that taught me to really respect the food we purchased, cooked, and ate. We had a busy lifestyle. Both of my parents worked, and I always had after-school activities. So I really didn't realize the value of food itself until I started working at EPA. The numbers and data that EPA collects on municipal solid waste and organics are what really made me sit up and take notice, because they just didn't seem real. So I think we're all here today, all of us, at this event today, have a much better understanding around the value of food and what it means. So I really hope to help you gain an understanding of the issues associated with wasted food and its impacts across the food system. I'll also provide you with some insight on what EPA is doing to reduce food loss and waste at the national level. And, when Cecilia and Michelle first asked me to speak, they were hoping I could share some local success stories on food waste reduction and diversion. But then I found out that Gary Cuneen and Susan Casey from 7 Generations Ahead are here to share more about their experiences with zero waste schools. Pete Adrian from the Solid Waste Agency of Lake County is bringing his expertise on ride-along compost programs into the municipality panel. And I think Mike Oshman from the Green Restaurant Association is bringing a wealth of experience greening some of America's largest restaurant chains to the restaurants panel, as well as some local restaurant folks as well. But really the work that these people do are the success stories that I would normally be sharing. So instead of doing that, I want to encourage you to catch them in the breakout panels. I know we can't catch them all at once. So please reach out to the other folks and tap into those panel members' expertise. These are the people who are in the field, performing boots on the ground work, inspiring real change, and making a difference in our communities. And I think who better than to learn from and collaborate with, right? So I'm going to start off by providing some background on food as it's measured as municipal solid waste. Now, EPA has collected and reported data on the generation and disposal of MSW in the US for more than 30 years. And some data goes way back to the 60s. Unfortunately, our measurement of food does not, right? But what is municipal solid waste, or MSW? As you know, it is typically comprised of items that we throw away every day: packaging, food, anything, you name it, whatever ends up in our trash bin. Sources of MSW come from the residential sector, the commercial sector, and institutional locations like businesses, schools, restaurants, and hospitals. Now, in 2018, EPA's Facts and Figures report estimates that over 63 million tons of food waste was generated from those sectors I just mentioned. And 56% of that ended up in our landfills. So that's over 35 million tons. So when we measure what's actually ending up in our landfills, food waste makes up over 24% of those materials. This makes it the single largest material by weight that's ending up in our landfills that is also the least recovered. So this is where I got caught up working at EPA. Like, I see these large numbers and it's not really tangible, right? What does that much food waste look like? Every day, America wastes enough food to fill the Rose Bowl. This is the first sentence from the first page of American Wasteland, a book about food waste written by author Jonathan Bloom. And I love this, and it's kind of dated, but I love it because it's so impactful. It really helps put things into perspective. And it's just mind-blowing to think about all that food that's being wasted, right? This is stadium holds over 90,000 people. So it's a lot. Now, I've talked about how much there is, and I'd like to provide another perspective, which really starts to give us an idea as to why that much wasted food is really a problem. So USDA estimates that 30 to 40% of our available food supply is wasted. So that means this is food that was available to eat that was never eaten. It never got eaten. That's a lot of food of our supply that's just going straight into the trash. And it's a problem because, producing, transporting, distributing, storing, cooking, and throwing away all that food that never gets eaten is a huge waste of resources. It's a waste of natural resources, it's a waste of labor, and it's a waste of money. And with climate-related disasters increasing not just in the US, but throughout the world, there are growing concerns over food system resilience, food equity and justice, and food availability, which we've all recently experienced due to the pandemic. So I've talked about how much there is, and we know it's a problem. I'd like to switch gears a little bit and take a look at some of the impacts associated with all this food waste. And first, and most importantly to me, wasted food impacts our society. I mentioned a couple of slides ago that between 30 and 40% of our available food supply is wasted. And while this is happening at the same time, 10.5%, almost 11% of US households are food insecure, meaning they don't know where their next wholesome, nutritious meal is coming from. And according to the NRDC, by reducing our edible food losses by just 15%, could feed more than 25 million Americans each year. I think it's really sad that this is happening. So there's also the actual legit cost of wasting food, right? USDA estimates that the economic cost of food loss and waste is it's at over $160 billion. And these costs are embedded in disposal costs over purchasing costs, and cost of lost energy creating that food. So we're basically throwing money away. And this is, I love this graphic. It's a really great USDA graphic that gives us some insight on how many tomatoes are wasted each year. And they estimate that over 21 tomatoes a year per person are wasted. And that's valued at over $2 billion a year. So it's kind of shocking that this is happening. And I'm guilty of it too. So with this next slide, now, unfortunately, I couldn't get a poll in here because my agency issued laptop wouldn't let me. But, you know, thinking about all those wasted tomatoes, I'd like to pause for a quick eat or toss game. Feel free to drop your answers in the chat box, but it's not required by any means. And for your reference, when the presentation goes out after today's event, I have hot linked these to the Eat or Toss webpage, which is really fun resource for you to check out all kinds of foods. And from a biologist who has, and scientist who has looked at these and makes recommendations and suggestions on what you can or can't do with some of these questionable items, right? So the first item are really wrinkled cherry tomatoes. They're tomatoes that have lost a lot of water. Would you eat them or would you toss them? I'm gonna pause for a sec and hopefully people drop some responses in the chat box, which I can't see right now because I'm in presentation mode.
Julie, can I ask a quick question so we
Sure.
can answer properly? Does toss mean compost or are you talking about trash?
Well, I'm being very vague here on purpose. Not everyone has access to a compost facility. Some people
All right.
compost in their backyards. Yeah, I wanted to be general without going into detail. Obviously, toss to me would be in my backyard compost pile for an item like this, right? So some people throw them in the trash. Either way, it's wasted. Well, we'll see. Wrinkled cherry tomatoes, would you eat them or would you toss them? I would, I mean, as long as they smell okay and they're not oozy, I would eat them. I personally would not eat this guy right here, the one on the left. But these two, their texture might be pretty gross, and the taste may not be optimal, but I'd probably throw them in a salad anyways. Now, the moldy tomato, I think we can all agree that that should be tossed, whether into your backyard compost pile or into your curbside collection bin if you have access to that, or in the trash if you don't do either. Okay, I'd like to get back to impacts. We've looked at how wasted food impacts our society and our economy. Let's take a look at the environmental impacts. Now, EPA recently released an environmental impacts report that looks at those impacts from farm to fork. And what we found is that the resources you see here ultimately went into growing, producing, distributing, and selling all the food that ends up being wasted. So about the equivalent greenhouse gas emissions of 42 coal-fired power plants went into growing food that is ultimately wasted. Enough water and energy to supply more than 50 million homes went into growing food that was ultimately wasted. The same for the amount of fertilizer used in the US to grow all plant-based foods for US human consumption. And we used an area of ag land equal to the size of California and New York to grow food that ultimately ends up being wasted. So those are really great ways to kind of get people thinking about, you know, these impacts are pretty large. Great way to get people thinking about food waste. And it doesn't end there. Our climate is also affected by wasted food. I mentioned the greenhouse gas emissions on the previous slide, but I'd like to show it from a different perspective. More than 85% of greenhouse gas emissions from our landfill food waste comes from the activities that occurred prior to disposal. And this includes production, transport, and processing and distribution of food. And these impacts are cumulative. So the greenhouse gas impacts that occur at this consumption stage are far greater than those that occur at this primary production stage. You're probably wondering at this point what EPA does, or maybe you're familiar with some of the work we've done. or have done to address this monster issue, because we do so much more than that data collection and measurement through the stats that I've shared with you earlier. We also collaborate with stakeholders across the food system. That includes other federal agencies, state and local governments, universities, nonprofits, and businesses. We perform outreach, education, and technical assistance. We also have funding opportunities through regional and national grants. I try to hold a regional grant competition for food specifically every other year. And we perform research, which really tells us what we need to know to help the US meet the 2030 food loss and waste goal, and also helps us to identify our future research needs. So much of the work we do is in support of reaching the goal to cut food loss and waste in half by the year 2030. And that goal is to bring it to 164 pounds per person per year. I'm going to talk a little bit about the goal because we recently revised this. It was 109 pounds per person per year. Now it's gone up significantly. When EPA and USDA initially announced the goal in 2015 to reduce food loss and waste by 50% by the year 2030, we initially interpreted that as aiming to cut in half the amount of per capita waste just ending up in our landfills and incineration or combustion facilities. So we recently revised it in order to better align with the UN's Sustainable Development Target 12.3. This is the Sustainable Development Goal, what we generally refer to as SDG 12.3. Realigning our domestic goal with that international target really helps to put us and the US on a more even playing field with the rest of the world who are participating in reaching this global goal. We expect the revised goal will hopefully encourage more investment in food waste prevention, and efforts to keep food in the human supply chain will hopefully drive more significant reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. It's really what we're working for. So ultimately, what we're aiming to cut in half now is the amount not just ending up in our landfills, but also ending up at incinerators, ending up down sewers, ending up at our AD facilities and our composting facilities. Now, don't freak out. This is where most people freak out and get worried when they receive this info. They're like, what do you mean we want to cut in half what we're sending to compost facilities? I thought that's what we wanted. Well, we do want to encourage diversion of food scraps. While the focus should be on the top tiers of the food recovery hierarchy that you see here, there will always be an important role for composting and AD because those are obviously better options than sending food to landfills or combustion facilities. There will always be unavoidable food scraps that need to be recycled. What we need to focus on is making sure that the unavoidable scrap ends up in those recycling facilities, and avoidable food stays within that human consumption chain. So aside from the goal in our collaborative work, the agency has also produced tools and resources that allow the public to better understand and address wasted food. I'm only linking a few here today, which I think are noteworthy. This is not by any means an exhaustive list of our available tools and resources, or any tools and resources out there. The first is the Excess Food Opportunities Map. This is an interactive map that identifies and displays facility-specific information about potential generators and recipients of excess food. The map has really been useful in identifying geographic gaps where services may be needed, such as composting facilities or even food rescue locations. The Food Too Good to Waste Toolkit is a community-based social marketing tool designed to reduce household food waste at the consumer level. I highlighted this because I'm going to touch on it a little more in the next couple of slides. And my colleague at headquarters also holds monthly national Food Too Good to Waste calls. These were initially geared towards state and local governments, but anyone's welcome to join. They have guest speakers on each month. It's an enormous amount of information being shared here. And there's a lot of peer networking happening on these calls. So I encourage you all to reach out to my colleague. I included her contact info and hop on those. It's a good time. So we've also developed, in collaboration with the USDA and the University of Arkansas, a guide to conducting student food waste audits. And then EPA's Sustainable Materials Management Web Academy has webinar recordings available for your viewing pleasure on the topic of food waste. And these are all free. And I encourage you to visit our webpage for more information on source reduction, donation, composting, and feeding animals for both individuals and businesses. So Food Too Good to Waste Toolkit. This is a behavior change and outreach toolkit that is specifically designed, like I said, to assist households with reducing wasted food at home. I wanted to go out of my way to really share this because it's something that everyone, all of you in attendance today, can check out and use at home with you today after today's event. And it also really helps to put that focus on food waste prevention. Like I said, we really need to do moving forward. The tools use community-based social marketing principles to introduce simple behavior change prompts, such as shopping your kitchen before you head to the store. A visual prompt like you see here for your refrigerator, for a section to put items in that are about to go bad, reminding you to eat what you buy. The toolkit also introduces methods for preparing meals ahead of time and provides smarter storage tips so fresh food lasts longer. Oop, sorry. Boop, boop, boop. Oh no, I don't want to ruin it. So when we first ran the toolkit as pilot, we found that households really are interested in reducing their waste. They're receptive to this type of campaign outreach and engagement, and they're especially receptive to saving money. The behavior change tools and strategies are really easy to implement. They are primarily geared toward municipalities and local governments. But like I said, anyone can go to the webpage and download these really neat prompts and tools for themselves and use them as they wish at home. But what the tools do is they reduce barriers that contribute to food waste, such as lack of skills maybe and habitual behavior like time management, while also emphasizing the benefits of cost savings. And they, most importantly, create awareness at the individual level, which I think is really key to motivating people to change. Some pilot participants, when we first ran this, were able to reduce up to 50% of the amount of food they were wasting at home. So like I said, these are all available for download for free. And if you're a municipality and have questions about it, reach out to me. I'm always happy to help municipalities implement this. So one more eat or toss. I couldn't help but do it. I had to do it. In my house, strawberries get wasted when we run out of Cool Whip. So I always try to make sure we have Cool Whip on hand, but they also get lost in the back of the fridge. And they are the one item that could really benefit from that Eat This First prompt that I showed you on the previous slide. So my first one moldy strawberry in an entire package. Would you eat any of the strawberries or would you toss the whole thing? And then the other one, goopy strawberries. These are strawberries that are oozy, so old, they're basically bleeding. Would you toss these or would you eat them or use them somehow? Drop your answers in the chat if you'd like. And in the interest of time, I am just going to go to the first one, a moldy strawberry or two in a pack that otherwise looks fine. I would just chuck those and eat the rest, right? I'm sure they're fine. The others should be okay. Goopy strawberries, I would probably toss these. There's probably mold or bacteria that you don't see. You may still be able to eat some, but they're more vulnerable to microbes, and odds are they won't taste very good either. So there's so many other resources available, and this page just only scratches the surface. A few I list here include the Commission for Environmental Cooperation's Measurement Guide and their Food Matters Action Kit. which aims to inspire youth across America to reduce food waste. The Further with Food website is a virtual clearinghouse for food waste. I like to refer to this as the Pinterest for food waste. And Save the Food assets and resources. These are free to use for public awareness campaigns and are a great resource for local governments. And then there is the infamous Refed Insights Engine. This is a food loss and waste hub designed to provide anyone interested in food waste reduction with the information and insight they need to take action. I love this page. It's very interactive. You can explore impactful solutions here. You can find solution providers, and you can even calculate impact efforts for a number of sectors across the food system. And for your use, when my presentation goes out after today's event, I did hotly each one that will take you directly to the page. So you don't have to waste time looking around. So what are our next steps as a country and as an agency? We are right now developing a brand new food and organic strategy that is, we're designing to complement the broader national recycling strategy. We expect the food and organic strategy to be out for public comment in March, and I'm happy to share a link to that once it's out with this group, and we expect it to be finalized this summer. I would briefly like to mention the Congressional Support EPA is receiving. The bipartisan infrastructure law is providing our recycling program with $350 million in grant funding over the next 5 years. We've never had anything like this. It's so exciting. And the Build Back Better Act could potentially be providing us with more funding specifically for organics and waste reduction. So stay tuned for more info on that. We are just starting to build out these grant programs. And one of our goals is really to ensure that this investment will not only expand access to recycling as a broader issue across the country, but will also help communities increase the opportunity to reduce, reuse, and recycle, such as composting materials like food. So we'll also be continuing our research. The second part of our environmental impacts report, I mentioned the first one earlier that looked at those impacts from farm to fork. The second part will analyze impacts across several waste management pathways. So stay tuned for that as well. And with that said, I would like to thank you for having me, but not before I share this final takeaway. First of all, this is a poster from 1917 put out by the U.S. Food Administration, which we know today as the USDA. And I love sharing this. It's amazing to me that this message, after over 100 years later, still resonates, and even more so now during the current pandemic. What I really hope that you all will walk away with today is some insight on how we need to work together to change the perception of excess food as a material handled as a waste to one that's handled as a resource and valuable commodity. And by making small shifts in how we manage our food, just starting at home, can collectively make a huge positive impact on our environment. So you'll get my email on this following today's event, but please shoot me a message if you'd like to be added to my stakeholder list. I share info out as it comes across my desk. This includes tools, webinars, funding opportunities, and I also host a quarterly food waste call with my colleagues in regions 7 and 8 for Midwest stakeholders. We host these meetings recognizing that the issues and barriers to food waste diversion and prevention that we experience here in the Midwest are far different than what the coastal regions experience. They are much smaller, more intimate calls. We have guest speakers and we facilitate peer-to-peer conversations. And sometimes it's actually really fun. Our last call, we had someone on who couldn't find a way to get rid of 40,000 pounds of charcuterie, if you can imagine that, before Christmas. And we were actually able to find someone who was able to drive 2 states over and rescue all of that food. So that's just a really great example of what those quarterly food systems calls do. And that's it. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much, Julie. That was a great presentation. I really blown away about the whole Rose Bowl. That's a good good analogy, and for people easy to see. And yeah, I feel like this is an excellent partnership because that's what we're trying to do, looking at reducing at the source, looking at where to not just divert food from, diverting the food from the landfill, but just to stop wasting the food altogether. And yeah, just thank you so much. If anyone, after Jamie speaks, if anyone does have any questions, I don't know if Julie, if you're still available.
Yeah, of course. I'll be
Okay.
available all day. I was so excited to get to the chat and see what people,
Okay, great.
people answer. Thank
Okay.
you so much. I really enjoyed putting that presentation together. Actually.
Oh, good. Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right. And now Michelle is going to introduce Jamie.
Yes, thank you, Julie. And I'm really excited about the national strategy that you guys are going to be putting together. So I'm really excited to see how that all turns out, especially since you guys released the national recycling strategy at the end of last year. So moving on to our next keynote, I would like to introduce our speaker, Jamie Brown. And Jamie Brown has served in diverse roles as a zero waste advocate, educator, and consultant throughout her 18-year career. For nearly 3 years, Jamie has worked for EcoProducts as a product and zero waste specialist, engaging with the Midwest region, where she shares her wealth of knowledge and expertise in the waste hauling, recycling, composting, and sustainability industries. Fueled by her passion for sustainable practices in business, as well as supporting local enterprises, Jamie has designed, developed, and implemented commercial organics programs for private hauling firms in the Twin Cities. Jamie's expertise also includes waste reduction, program development and implementation, strategic planning for zero waste initiatives, and organics waste collection management, business development, and Spanish speaking fluency. Please welcome Jamie Brown.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm going to attempt to share my screen. I'm going to leave my video off just to make sure, because sometimes my bandwidth gets a little bit wonky here. Let's see. Can you see that, my screen?
Yep, you're all good.
All right. Well, thanks again. And thanks to everyone. Julie, great presentation. I am here to tackle the other side of the some of the issues that we're faced with in this current environment, plastics waste. And in talking to Zach in preparation for the conference, he mentioned, I feel like I'm going down rabbit holes quite a few times. So because this is one of our most complex crises that we're facing of our time, I'm going to just do my best to give you just the highest level overview of our situation with plastics in general, with the focus on single-use plastics, give you an idea of how we got here, what are the solutions that we have that we're working towards out there, and then finally, what is EcoProducts as a manufacturer doing to tackle this issue, and how we are advocating to ensure that the plastic doesn't become waste. So with that, let's see here. So how did we get here? What are the origins of our throwaway lifestyle? This graphic was particularly impactful when I saw it. I believe it came out on the cover of Life magazine back in 1970. So while plastics have been manufactured largely since the 19th century, our use of plastics really started to skyrocket in the 1970s. It's an inexpensive, lighter alternative to some of the other substrates that we have out there. And so it really started taking off when we started replacing things like paper products and glass products with lighter, cheaper plastic alternatives. While there are good uses, I guess I loosely use the term good, effective uses for plastic, I would say, like medical devices, surgical gloves, things of that nature. Most are not. And unfortunately, quite a lot of what that plastic pool entails is our single-use plastic. So things designed to use one time and then toss. Things like water bottles, plastic bags, straws, styrofoam containers, and most food packaging. So single-use plastics is really becoming a global concern. I mean, there's different stats out there, but I think globally about half of the plastics that we're producing are single-use plastics. And they're finding their ways into our environment, our wildlife, and having impacts on our health. So oh shoot, sorry, I think yeah, back here. Yeah, sorry about that. So I think I got my slides mixed up here. Sorry, guys. I wanted to show you this one. We'll start with this. So there's a couple of solutions out there that we're working quite aggressively. This slide demonstrates the US Plastics Pact, which is a group of businesses, stakeholders, governments that have joined together to kind of tackle this issue. And so we've got a large coalition of folks globally that are working on the challenge with some really lofty goals, which are to have either 100% reusable, recyclable, or compostable plastics by the year 2025. This is kind of an outline of our current paradigm, which is take, make, and throw. And this really drives home the impact of the amount of plastics that we're producing and what's actually getting recycled. And you can see by this diagram that we're producing about 78 million tons annually of plastic, largely with virgin feedstocks. I think about 6% of the oil that we produce goes to the production of plastic. So these are non-renewable resources that are also creating a lot of waste in their production as well. And it's a staggering thing to note that of all that plastic that we're producing, you can see out the side to the right here that 40% of it's actually ending up in the landfill. You've got a large amount of it that kind of makes its way to leakage, leaking different chemicals in the environment. Some of it goes to incinerators. And then up top here, you see of the amount that's actually being collected for recycling, only 8% is getting recycled. So basically what we're striving for here is moving towards a circular economy. And for those of you that aren't familiar with the term, it's just looking at the way that we manage this material differently, not only by reducing some of the problem items that we use, but by designing more efficiently, use and reuse, and then improving our overall recycling systems and keeping everything in the economy rather than throwing it away at the end. So this diagram is put out by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and that's the model that the US Plastic Pact is using as we're working towards more of a circular design where we're keeping these items, out of the waste stream and reusing them in this fashion. And then with striving towards a circular economy, there's 4 pillars here, and you can see them over to the right. Redesign. Let's rethink a lot of our smaller format things that are getting into the garbage, like, you know, caps or different types of sachets, those types of items. How can we redesign those for better use? Innovation, how can we look at the substrates? A lot of the problems that recycling facilities have in recycling these items is that they're made of a mixture of resins. So are there ways that we can streamline materials, pick better materials that can either be composted or recycled? The third tier, replace some of these problematic items that there aren't really recycling markets for, like PVC and polystyrene, which we talked about earlier. And then finally, scale up our use of alternative substrates that are renewable, compostable plastics that can actually help recover some of the food that we're wasting and be turned into a valuable soil amendment rather than discarding it as trash. So what are we doing as a company to kind of address this issue? This kind of indicates our approach to working towards a circular economy. We've got a couple of product lines here and raw materials that we use. Our green stripe line. What's great about this is it is made from renewable resources. So PLA, which is the corn resin. Some of the other items we use for other packaging, wheat straw, sugarcane, bamboo. Things to consider, as Julie mentioned, access to commercial compost facilities. It's a challenge. It's ever expanding, but we're really working hard towards expanding access. And something to be aware of is these items are not for use in a backyard composting situation. So there's still a couple of challenges, but we're working the solution. We are using renewable resources instead of products that are made from oil. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we're still working the improved recycled material product line. All of these items in our blue stripe line are made from post-consumer recycled content, which is part of what we're striving towards, is ever increasing the amount of recycled content that we're putting into these products, which means fewer oil being used, less waste being created, and helping to drive recycling markets, create demand, improve the infrastructure there. Considerations in this area, a lot of the, some of the single-use items are not recyclable in a majority of communities. So you just want to be aware of that. And I just want to say, as we're expanding in areas where we know that we've got commercial composting infrastructure, we're actually starting to eliminate more of the products in our line that don't have that higher recycled content in favor of 100% compostable. So this diagram just kind of gives you an idea of some of the challenges that we've got around food service packaging and why we're trying to increase the amount of post-consumer content that we use. As you can see, most of the items that are actually getting recycled are the different types of substrate, PET, bottles, cans, cardboard, and you can see down at the bottom some of the product categories that we have. Recycling is not widely available, so you need to be careful when terms are being thrown out. You know, an item may be recyclable, but you really need to check with your community recycling firm to make sure that the products are actually getting recycled, and even better, switching this type of product out for something that is compostable. As I said, and as Julie pointed out, food waste is still a problem, but access to composting that accepts packaging is expanding. We did our own study in-house that kind of gave a even more promising picture of some of these status here. We at EcoProducts, we have a network of about 234 haulers and composters that we work with across the country. So not only do they take food scraps, but they take packaging. So while we're not where we need to be yet, we are making strides. And, you know, while COVID did kind of set us back in some of our recycling endeavors, there's still movement, there's still progress. Some of it is centered around different producer responsibility programs that are still in play. And I think a lot of the brands we found were sticking to their sustainability commitments, even in the face of COVID. So there's promise. And I think we're still, while we faced a few setbacks, we're still moving in the right direction. Legislation and bans certainly help. I'm based here out of Minneapolis. We've actually had some green to go ordinances here in the city of Minneapolis, one in the city where I live, St. Louis Park, that requires that restaurants use packaging that's either reusable, recyclable, or compostable. Along with those ordinances, we also have styrofoam bans. And here on this slide, you can see there's increasingly more cities. These are being driven by cities, in some cases by states. So legislation certainly does help. And there's more and more coming. And in addition to that, I think consumers still want to support businesses that are environmentally responsible. And here's some stats from the National Restaurant Association that back that up. So as you can see, 55% of consumers consider a restaurant's effort to reduce food waste. 51% would consider whether that establishment recycles, and 45% would consider whether a restaurant is using environmentally preferred packaging. So as we go to our breakout with the restaurant folks, this is truly another reason besides the environmental benefits is your customers want this, and they're increasingly using that as a determining factor if they are going to frequent your restaurant or not. This kind of is a graphic of how EcoProducts is approaching the solution with using our compostable plastics, and just making sure that everyone in the chain from procurement to recovery, from the haulers, the composters, just working every aspect from making sure that the consumers are producing the right, or excuse me, are purchasing the right type of packaging to begin with, and then really working with all the people on down the chain, making sure that our distributors are educating them on what's available and how to use the products. And then we have a team which I'm part of, which is our PZW team, which is quite unique in our industry. And I believe we're pretty much the only manufacturer that's doing this, where we have a set of folks that is from waste hauling. All of us are either former composters, organics haulers, waste haulers. So we understand the challenges that the haulers and composters have on the back end. So our job is really to connect all the dots between everyone in this chain to make sure that our products are actually reaching their highest end goal and getting recycled. So from beginning of life to end of the life. So I just want to, usually we start with this slide when we're doing a presentation, but I wanted to end with this just kind of as a call to action. As I said, we've got specialists in the field that are working on not only boots on the ground advocacy, but just working with the legislation, with the composting community, seeking out how can we do better. These solutions aren't perfect, but they're what we've got as we're working towards some of those bigger goals and behavior change on the hierarchy that you saw. And the waste hierarchy is similar to the food hierarchy. How can we not produce these things in the first place? And while we're working towards that behavior change, what can we do in the meantime? And as Julie said, little things really do make a difference, and you don't need to be an expert to understand this. And so together we can really turn the end of a meal into infinite possibilities. So with that, I will conclude and thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Can you guys hear me? Okay, great. All right, thank you, Julie, for that great presentation. We really wanted to focus on our two areas, food waste and reduction of single-use plastic. And so we do have some extra time right now. So if anyone has any questions, please put them for Julie or for Jamie. You can put them in the chat, and we can go through them.
Celia, I don't know if you want to have people just unmute themselves and ask questions too. I see a few people have their hands raised.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Maybe just call on some of them first.
Okay, sure. Guy Spinelli, would you like to ask a question?
Yes, I've got a question. Is Julie still there? Julie Brown?
Jamie Brown?
Jamie Brown, yeah.
I'm sorry, Jamie Brown.
Yeah.
Jamie, I've got a question for you. I'm a manufacturer of paper straws. The straw was designed over 1.5 years to last in any drink. It really lasts up to 2 weeks. Since March, I've been reaching out to just about every government agency on selling these straws. We've sold 4 cartons a month in the last 10 months of 4,200. Restaurants don't want paper. And I just don't understand. It's biodegradable in 90 days in any landfill. Why paper straws just don't sell? Do you have any take on that?
My take, and this is just me talking, but I feel like there's two things, performance, and this is something that we struggle with in designing compostables, is it's a balance. There's such a delicate balance between performance and environmental impact. So I would say a lot of folks don't like the paper straw, the way it performs.
Mm-hmm.
It's not great in smoothies. I think there's a big focus on maybe like the paper straws that folks use for disabilities, like the one that bends. And then working towards the paradigm of not producing the waste in the first place, which is where I come from. I sell compostable straws, but I always recommend to clients that we don't use the straw in the first place.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
I know that's probably not what you want to hear.
No. And really to correct some of what you've said is, number one, there's 500 million plastic straws used in the United States every day.
Yes,
That hits the landfills.
yes.
Number two, the straw that we're talking about will be used and can be used in any substance, including smoothies, and has actually won awards in McHenry County. And my question is that, yes, paper straws in the last 4 years have been given a bad name, but when you go and develop something like a straw that does last, that doesn't taste like paper, that doesn't disintegrate in drinks, and has been proven, can't get people like yourself behind it. You'd rather see the plastic straws in the landfill.
Well, we use bioplastic, which is corn resin. So all the straws that we produce are made to be compostable.
Yeah, but those straws will take 10 years to become earth again. Correct?
10 years.
Yeah.
In a commercial compost facility, they break down in 90 to 180 days.
Okay, but in a landfill.
Oh, in a
Okay.
landfill. Well,
Correct.
that's what we're striving towards, not putting them in a landfill and putting them in a compost facility.
So that's why I'm saying is that a paper straw, that is every bit as good as the straw that you're making.
Yeah,
if not better.
absolutely. We sell paper straws.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why don't they sell is the question.
Well, I gave you my take. I don't know if there's any consumers out there that are buying them. My colleague, I don't know if Carrie, if you want to chime in, she worked for a company that made biodegradable straws.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
So, hello, everybody. Nice to meet you. I'm the Midwest Regional Sales Manager for EcoProducts. I was formerly with Wrinkled and actually was the Regional End User Specialist for their new straw called Fade. It's a PHA, polyhydroxyalkanoate. It's a bioplastic made from fermented canola. And to answer your question about the straws, the biggest problem people have is, again, it's the waste. Ultimately, more products going anywhere. The glues that are in it, the residues that are in it, that's going to be the number one hands up from any legislation. And that's obviously done by normally each state. They have different things in different states, but ultimately anything going to the landfill, if you bury a straw with another 10 tons of waste and you dig that up in 10 years time, that straw is still going to be there because there's nothing there to break it down. So the argument of anything going to the landfill, if it's got oxygen to it to break it down, it will do. But if not, and it's covered, you could put a crisp $100 bill down there, dig it up after so many years. The issue is that honestly, people just don't like the texture of paper. EcoProducts, our straws, our paper straws, they're wonderful. Same thing, you can stick it in a drink and sit it there all day. But it's the issue of people don't like the texture. They don't like the feel of it on their lips. They don't like the fact that it does have some residue to it. So ultimately, I hate to say this, but if you came to the table with the straws being manufactured at this stage of the game, that's the issue, is most people have already made their mind up. So PLA, PHA, paper, whatever it is, ultimately the bigger issue here is just don't use a straw.
And once again, it's false information.
I just want to chime in
I'm
here.
saying false information is that our straw hasn't been tried by either one of you.
Kai, I would like to just chime in here. I know that we have opened this up for Q&A for everyone. I think this would be a good conversation to maybe move
Take
into breakout.
offline, absolutely.
Yeah,
Sure.
Either breakout or, you guys can discuss separately. But I do see that Scott has his hand up and I would like other people to get some time in to ask questions. Scott, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Thank you very much for everybody's presentation so far. This is fascinating and exciting. I love hearing about that the compost issue is being addressed and recognized, and the talk about markets, because to have a sustainable system, there needs to be demand to complete the circle. So really appreciate the work you guys are doing, this goes a little bit deeper into plastics and packaging and other materials altogether, but there should be no waste. In my household, the majority of the waste is packaging, and packaging is important. You can't, if you're just putting products out there that end up getting damaged or melted or otherwise unsellable, you're not doing anything to reduce food waste pollution. And so what I've always envisioned is like having a bioplastic that will remain intact until you add a chemical to trigger a breakdown process. Is that just science fiction, or is that something that is talked about in your industry at all? Because if we could come up with something like that, we could increase the durability of products and still have it completely in a closed loop type of a system, because it wouldn't be damaged or broken down until some type of inert chemical is added. Is that talked about at all?
Absolutely. Yeah. We're always looking at different substrates as they're emerging and figuring out how we can better design and yes, I would say yes.
Okay, I'll keep dreaming then. That
Yeah.
it's not
It's just
completely.
that it doesn't, that's the only downside, is it doesn't happen overnight. And it's like, that's where it comes back to working the solutions that we have in tandem with the research and the time it takes to develop these other solutions. And then also making the shift to what are ways are there ways we can eliminate it altogether when we're looking at certain types of packaging?
Thanks.
Mhm.
Thanks for that question there. Does anyone else have any other additional questions? I don't know if anyone else has their hands raised at this time.
I have a quick question, if that's okay. Probably more for Julie. I know I hear a lot, we use a lot of the compostable plastic products at MCC, and we are lucky enough to have access to a commercial composter. But I know a lot of schools and a lot of organizations struggle with cost, because they do cost a little bit more than the regular stuff. I'm just was wondering if you know of any programs or opportunities or grants or pilot projects, either one of you really, that I could share with people that are interested.
You mean successful pilots or success stories of universities specifically that have been able to cost effectively implement the use of that, or?
Yeah, and also opportunities to purchase them for different entities, schools and smaller groups that might want to use them.
Yeah, that's a good question. At the national level, we generally don't provide funding for like materials and equipment and stuff. So that's definitely something you're going to find more at a local level. So, but USDA may fund something like that. And so I would be happy to put a list together of resources and examples that you may want to stay on top of in the future if you're looking for that kind of funding.
Yeah, that'd be great. We could just get the question a lot in the Sustainability Center about access to that. And somebody in the chat asked about the commercial composter. That's we use Prairie Land is the one who takes our compost for their commercial.
And they accept those materials. I mean, if you change materials, based on cost or something because you got funding and you needed to find another supplier, you'll work with them to make sure they accept it. I think that's one of the biggest issues is, first of all, contamination, and second of all, is there a specific product that your hauler or facility will not accept or take because they find maybe it doesn't break down in the amount of time that they need to turn their product around, because you got to remember these compost facilities need to make money as well. And if they can't turn their product around in the right amount of time in order for them to get their own, income, then they're probably not going to accept that material. So keep that in mind when you're out shopping for those kinds of materials. That's really my only recommendation. Yeah, I'll put some maybe potential funding sources together. I would look to the state or DECIO. Yeah, I'll put something together after today's event for sure.
That'd be great. Thanks, Julie.
No
I think that just brings to another question is there is a lot of confusion about what's compostable and who takes it and all that other stuff. So there definitely contamination is an issue for sure.
Julie, if you want to send us the resource list you put together, we can pass that along to Kim and anyone else from today's event that's interested.
Yeah, no problem. It might take me some time to put that together. So it's fine.
Yeah, no, I just thought it might be a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Cynthia, did you want to you had a question?
Yeah, so we have a couple of communities, Lake in the Hills and Crystal Lake in McHenry County that offer curbside compost pickup to their residents. And so for those who cannot have, may not have a yard, maybe they're live in multifamily dwellings. Do you see that, Jamie, as one of the stumbling blocks that we don't have those contracts in place for the most part in our communities? And would that make a really huge difference? I mean, obviously educating people, for those of us who never throw food scraps out, it's astonishing to know that it's very commonplace, and educating, and that's where the defenders comes in part, but we also advocate for those policies. So do you see that as something that would really help and encourage our municipalities to engage in contracts that offer that with our waste haulers? Curbside compost
Absolutely.
pickup.
Educate. That's the cornerstone of making the shift and starting. I mean, if it's starting with food scraps only, let's start with food scraps only, because we can make a huge difference there. And that's part of the challenge that we have as we're trying to expand the infrastructure, is a lot of these products, these products are not made to break down in a backyard or a community composting facility, because the temperatures need to heat up to like 160 degrees Fahrenheit for the microbes to start doing their work. So a lot of folks say, well, if I don't, if my composter isn't accepting those types of packaging, why should I buy them? And I would suggest using a renewable resource is a good first step, but it's a challenge, because we don't want that stuff being thrown away either, because it's gonna, while I'd like to say it performs differently in a landfill, it doesn't. There's no air in there, so it's gonna break down the same as a plastic. But I don't think that should be a prohibitive reason, because to not, we could still make that small shift, because we're constantly advocating for more access, more legislation. We in Illinois, I'm fairly fortunate in Minneapolis here, because we do have a lot of legislation. We've got 2 huge compost facilities that I worked with for many years that accept packaging. So, and we do have grant programs here, so we've kind of got like a trifecta of good going for us, whereas it's been more difficult in Illinois, and we're really working to have these conversations with the composters. While it's not easy for them to accept packaging, it's doable. And I know that organics is they were purchased by We Care Denali a few months back, and they're kind of cleaning up that site and restructuring with the idea that they're going to start accepting CMA approved compostable products, which I didn't talk about this in my talk, which I had intended to, but just the certifications that compostable products go through. You've got a manufacturing standard, which is ASTM. You've got a chemical standard, which is BPI certification. And then you've got a field tested. So that means that we have composters across the country that actually do test our products and confirm that they do break down.
Yeah. Jamie, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I was also
sorry.
really thinking about food waste. So can Julie hop in there really
Oh,
quick?
yeah.
And because I know there are other questions. Thank you.
I think my only response to that is check out what other municipalities are doing. And, you know, the U.S. Composting Council has really great sample contracts that you can use when it is time for you to shop around for new haulers. And you can see in the sample contracts the kind of language they're using that can help you, you know, move forward in your own efforts. And I think that Jamie said this in the beginning of her response, is that education at that point is the most important, because you really, whether you're allowing compostable materials in your stream or not, or whether your compost facility where your stream is going to accepts it or not, you have to, in order to keep your program functioning and positive for your community, you have to keep contamination out. And I think that sometimes allowing those materials really is what starts to lead to more contamination. So you have to be really careful as you implement that throughout your program. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
I think in the municipality panel would be a great place to get some good answers to that too. Like Pete's implemented, you know, composting run-on programs in so many communities. So
Yeah, I think Pete's going to address that.
good.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and Scott, you have another question?
Yeah, for Jamie again. So your recycled plastic line, you know, once again, I'm really glad that you're I guess, posting the amount of post-consumer waste you're putting in there. But I am curious, in your recycled line, can that then be recycled at the same level as it is right now? And then in regard to your compostable line, as far as making it viable for compost facilities, what if it were shredded prior to being delivered to the composting facility? Would that accelerate the biodegradation process? And I guess, is that something that's been looked into?
So to address your first question, not ever. So it's really a municipal question about whether a given MRF, they call it, which is the recycling center, will accept those items. A lot of times they don't. So therein lies the problem and the work that we have to do with enhancing our recycling structure and so forth. So the real value is just that the substrates that we're making the items with have a higher recycled content, but I think a lot of the times most MRFs don't accept those items. Some of them do, but again, you have to kind of check in your municipality. So that would be the drawback. Did that answer your question on that one?
I guess just chemically, you know, not even from a system standpoint, but chemically, could you take that, the recycled products that you supply, and then use that as feedstock for the next generation of products, so that it can be used over and over again? You know, in a perfect world where, you know, you're able to recover that easily, chemically, could it be recycled at the same level? And then the shredding question.
So are you asking the chemical question about the recycled content or about compostables?
No, the recycled content. So could we take your recycled cups and then use that as the feedstock for the next generation of recycled cups?
I know there is chemical recycling. I'm not an engineer, so I'm probably not the best equipped to answer that question, but I certainly can find more information out about that and get back to you.
Okay, and yes, because there may be degradation of the plastics so that it physically could not be reused. I don't know the answer to that. That's kind of what I was getting at, if in that regard to that question. But I am curious about the shredding question, and then
A
that'll be.
lot of, yeah, some composters do put the items through a shredder. I think the most problematic with breakdown that we've got would be the cutlery. So that could help, but I think everything else breaks down pretty nicely within the required timeframes, as we found in our field testing. So that's been another frustration, is it's just kind of a blanket statement where it's like, well, your products don't break down in our facilities, and we've tested them. They do break down. We test them with composters across the country. So that's where we really need to have dialogue with our state composters and be like, okay, how are you managing your process such that this is happening? What can we do? Did you have enough airflow, enough, are you managing your carbon to nitrogen ratios? Things like that. So I think a lot of times, because it's hard to do and contamination can be an issue, people just throw their hands up and say, it doesn't break down in our facility, which is not true, because we go to very extensive lengths to make sure. And if something isn't, we definitely have a dialogue and have folks test our products right out in their piles to make sure, because we don't want to bring a problem. We don't want to bring that problem to our composters either. We want our products to perform.
Thanks.
All right, great. Those were very interesting questions. Anyone else have any other questions for Julie or Jamie? Don't see any hands up. I just have one question. Here today we have schools, we have our municipality leaders, we have our restaurants. And I'm looking, as we talk about us, thinking about grocery stores. Have you ever, either of you, worked with the grocery store on food waste? And is this something that we can do? Have you seen it done at a local level to try to reduce the amount of food they waste there at the grocery store? Or is this more of a state or national issue?
I would see it better
Absolutely.
done.
Yeah.
It's better done at the local level.
Yeah.
So through your local municipality, I think. I've had issues working with grocery stores because I don't know if there's some kind of conditioned attitude toward the government or something, but every time I've walked through a grocery store and, in an effort to analyze or assess what's being wasted, I've been met with a lot of resistance. So I would rather send consultants, contractors, or local nonprofits out to assist them at the request of a local government. That's definitely the best way to go in my experience.
Thanks.
We work with a lot of, I think the majority of them are co-ops because they're more concerned about these matters, but we've had huge success working on the diversion, not only with donating the food that's viable for donation, but managing the food scraps and the compostable products here. We work with probably all the co-ops in town here. And then I know that there's a few chains that are making strides towards that. Your Hy-Vee is a Midwest chain that's making strides with their food waste, pre and post consumer. And then Albertson is another one that has some pretty decent programs, and Walmart, I will say, is another one.
Aldi and Kroger as well.
Yeah.
Kroger owns Mariano's now. So.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other questions before we're just gonna have our executive director kind of close this out at this section?
I don't know if this is appropriate, but I see a lot of questions about Midwest Organics. Did you want me to try to answer that for the group or just put it in the chat?
I guess if you want to answer, we've I know Midwest Organics does a lot with a lot of our our local municipalities
Yeah.
and restaurants. But yeah, if you
They're
want to.
great. And I mean, they've tested our products and they do break down in their facility. But one of the challenges with Midwest is they're OMRI certified. And this is kind of another rabbit hole that I'm going to try to do a broad overview, but OMRI certification of the finished compost means that there can't be any compostable products in there or synthetic products. So for them to do a broader scale collection of not just food scraps, but food scraps with compostable products would require them to, it's not impossible, but they would have to have a separate row. It's called a wind row where they would manage that material. And I just don't, this is a matter of just working with them on whether they have the capacity and the staff to want to do that. So that's one of the challenges that they have, and the reason why they would tell you folks that are commenting as a client that they don't take those items.
Okay.
I know they were doing a few pilots for Lake County, but I don't know what the status of those pilots are.
Okay, great. And now this thanks everyone. Thank you again, Julie and Jamie for.
Oh, I was just gonna say that looks like there was one more question in the
Oh,
chat.
there was. Oh, sorry.
It looks like Carol asked, what is the status of working with larger organizations such as Costco, where the impact of changing plastic food containers would hit a larger scale? I'm not sure who that was geared to, or if it was towards Julie or Jamie, but I don't know if either of you want to.
Sounds like Jamie.
Okay.
Oh, that's a big one. Yeah, I mean, that we are working with them, but that's a slow process. So a lot of behavior change. We were doing some pilots, and this was mainly in areas where we have bans and requirements.
Mhm.
So unfortunately, they haven't adopted alternatives on a wide scale, but we continue to work with them and switch out a few of their products. And if you'd like more information on that, I can check with our national accounts guy who works more closely with Costco to see exactly what they're buying and follow up.
Thank you for answering
And
that.
to that end, you'd have to remember, like, it sounds like it would be at a large scale, but like Jamie said, it would only be effective in certain areas where you can actually, process those materials. So it wouldn't necessarily be at a large scale, as large a scale as it sounds like, because not everywhere has access to compost services, right? The services that can actually process those materials.
Right. I also just wanted to add, because I work for a food manufacturer, so I'm kind of familiar with industry, but a lot of bigger companies or larger organizations tend to have their own corporate agenda for sustainability. So I don't think those are as well structured, I guess, or there's no real standard. Everybody kind of just does their own initiatives. So I think it's a little bit harder to say for those larger organizations. I think Scott had his hand up, and then after that, I think we'll wrap up the Q&A part.
Yeah, this is in regard to the Costco question, and it's really kind of interesting because Costco not only has influence over their own stores, but they have influence over the entire supply chain. And so if they were to make a decision to have compostable packaging as a requirement, their vendors would hop on the bandwagon very, very quickly because they want Costco's business. And if the packaging is then being required, that's going to create demand at Midwest Organics and others to have that separate system in place because the demand would be there. So Costco, Walmart, and others really can have dramatic impact on the entire supply chain. Walmart, for all their flaws, has done some pretty amazing things,
Yep.
including requiring their vendors to reduce their packaging by like 30%. The one problem there, though, is that when they did that, a lot of the vendors just took out things that would stabilize the product inside the boxes to meet that 30% reduction, which meant the product slid around and then broke. So, although the intent was there to reduce waste, it inadvertently, at least temporarily, created a lot of waste because the vendors just weren't prepared to meet that standard off the bat. So these are very interesting questions, but our big manufacturers, McDonald's and all these companies, can have tremendous influence on the entire supply chain to work towards sustainability. And each of these companies does have a corporate sustainability report. So I do this even if I'm buying pencils. I'll look up their corporate sustainability report and find out what their environmental and sustainability practices are. And anytime you see a corporate sustainability report or any type of marketing saying we've always been green, your BS radar should go up very quickly. But a lot of companies are really doing great things. And I highly recommend everybody on this call, if you haven't done it already, look up corporate sustainability report, or CSR. Sometimes it's called social responsibility reports, but look up corporate sustainability reports, and you'll be able to find what all these major manufacturers are doing around the world. Pretty interesting.
All right, thank you. It's a great conversation, everyone. And we're just gonna now have our executive director speak just to kind of close this portion off. We're going to have a little break until 11, and then when Cynthia's done, we'll put, if you're in the municipalities, just stay right here in this link. This is going to be our link for the municipality group. If you're in schools or if you're in restaurants, we're about to put those links in the chat if you don't have them. And just thank you again, everyone, for coming. And I just want everyone to just really think about what is their role in reducing food and plastic waste. And with that, Cynthia Cantor, our Executive Director of the Environmental Defenders.
Thank you, Cecilia and Michelle. And to our speakers, Julie and Jamie, thank you so much for being here today. And obviously to everyone who's attending, this is just fantastic. And I am so proud of our community for being resilient during this time of COVID and, willing to get on there. We're all like Zoom experts now, right? I mean, there's still some glitches that go on, but we really do look forward to a part B. So as I close out this morning's session, I just want to put in your minds to discuss and something that the Defenders holds dear is creating lasting change for the betterment of the environment, which affects human and all health. So McHenry County has done some fabulous things, and working together is going to make a really big difference. Change is coming to Illinois through legislation. This session, there will be a styrofoam ban bill that will be out there, and we'll see if that moves. That's huge. Next year, there will be a plastic reduction, a single-use bill that will be put out that will encompass several of that low-hanging plastic fruit, things we really don't need, plastic bags, bottles, and straws in general. And so we want to think about our local legislation too and what we can do here. So City of Woodstock is a great example. They passed a plastic bag fee. It's an optional fee. If you bring your own, of course, there's no fee. Like Cecilia said in the intro, this group, the Waste Reduction Action Team, and I commend you for this fantastic organizing of this summit. It's just, I'm so proud of our team. It's just amazing. But that BYO bag team was put into place specifically to start working with our municipalities individually. And we were happy. 2013, we kicked off, and then several years later, we did have City of Woodstock. So one of the things that's going to happen is that when there is statewide legislation, if there's local legislation put into action already, they will be grandfathered in. So I'm just encouraging everyone in your breakout rooms to really think about change that you can make and bring to our McHenry County community. We really are the leaders in many ways in Illinois, environmentally speaking, and let's keep that momentum going and keep offering our residents the opportunity to be as green-minded in practice and in heart as possible. So with that, thank you again to Aptar Group Charitable Foundation for supporting 3 years of our Styrofoam collection program, plus the Sustainability Summit, to our speakers, to our Waste Reduction Action Team, to MCC, where we will see you as follow-up this summer with lunch from Duke's. And just thank you to all our partners who are here listening today. And I look forward to hearing your outcomes from the breakout rooms. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, we'll see you guys all at 11. We're just gonna have a little slideshow running if you're while you wait for the breakouts. All right, thank you guys.